April 18, 1944. In a forceful action, Indian forces counterattacked the Japanese in the mountainous area of Kohima. After almost 8 years of war in Asia, Japan had finally reached the gates of British India. But India would not fall easily like its neighbors, but would give an exemplary fight to Japan and also to Hitler on several fronts, contributing 2.5 million volunteers to the Allied effort throughout the war. As if this were not enough, he also faces British rule with Mahatma Gandhi at the helm to obtain his emancipation. This is the story of India in the Second World War, with its victories, its tragedies, and its independence from the British Empire. When the war began in 1939 with the German invasion of Poland, India formed part of the British Empire and was the jewel of the English crown, also including present-day Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Kashmir. Formally conquered in 1858 by the British, at the beginning of the war it contained 380 million human beings, of which only 100,000 were English. Because of this, the main official languages are English and Hindi, apart from ancestral ones such as Sanskrit. India is an agricultural-based country that often suffers from cyclones and torrential rains. The vast majority of Indians live and work in the countryside and 80% are illiterate. The English export raw materials to the metropolis of the empire. In the textile industry, cotton is sold to cities such as Manchester where clothing is manufactured. The same happens with indigo, jute, or tea. The average life expectancy is just 31 years and the main religions are Hinduism and then Islam. Various faiths such as Buddhism, Judaism, and Sikhism, among others, are also practiced. In the 4 million square kilometers that make up India, about 2 million are directly administered by the British Viceroy, while in the other half of the territory there are about 600 districts known as principalities. In some cases they reach the size and population of France or Spain. These principalities are governed by hundreds of local chiefs, nicknamed by different names such as Maharajas, Sultans, Nizams, Nabobs, or Princes. Most of these are educated in the United Kingdom, and are loyal to the British Viceroy of India to maintain his position of power without problems. Despite this, some become very rich, as is the case of the Nizam of Hyderabad, who became the richest man in the world in 1937. The vast majority of Indians, however, are discriminated against by the British through divisions on trains and in places of recreation, with whites only or Europeans only signs. More extreme than this, however, is the caste system of the Hindus themselves. With a pyramidal shape, the society is divided according to the belief in the god Purusha in a forceful way. Below everyone, there are the Dalits or so-called untouchables, who total 80 million people considered pariahs, who can only perform the most marginal tasks and are totally discriminated against. Above are the workers or servants called Shudras. Above are the merchants called Vaishyas, and then the kings or warriors called Kshatriyas. Above all are the priests known as Brahmins, those who claim to carry the power that sustains the universe. Despite this caste system and British control, a parliament with its own political parties operates in India. The main one of them, the Congress Party, created in 1885, with a center-left social democratic and liberal orientation, which is the base of the independence movement. Returning to the war, in September 1939, England declared war on the Third Reich. The British Viceroy of the Raj, Lord Linlithgow, announces on his own behalf and without consulting Indian politicians, that India will support the fight against Germany. At this time, Japan has been waging an open war against China since 1937, which is a close threat to India. Soon, recruiting stations opened and more than 2.5 million people joined the war effort throughout the war. Men and women make up the British Indian Army, which will be the largest volunteer army in history. They will take place and fight alongside allies in France, North Africa, Singapore, and other countries. Of the 10 million soldiers mobilized by the United Kingdom, 25% come from India. The traditionally warrior races, which have generations of military tradition, the Nepalese Sikhs, Marathas and Gurkhas are initially the chosen ones. But with the increase in the needs of the conflict, combatants from other regions and ethnicities are joining. Even untouchables from Bengal join the ranks because belonging to the army ensures they have food. During the year 1940 they received training for modern warfare and some were sent to France. Although the European war seems far away, the Indian elite brings back their children who study in Europe, especially after the fall of France. On the other hand, along with recruitment, Germans and Italians are also imprisoned in India. There are barely 2,500 of them, and one of them world famous is the mountaineer Heinrich Jahrer, who is the protagonist of the film 7 Years in Tibet, based on his memoirs. But in parallel with its participation in the war, India has not stopped fighting for its independence. Since 1919, Indians have sought freedom with more desperation. In that year, English Brigadier General Reginald Dyer repressed a peaceful demonstration, leaving almost 400 civilians dead, many of them children, and more than 1,000 injured. The savage massacre generated global shock and was the beginning of India's quest for freedom. About 10 years later, led by a small and peaceful man named Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Indians unite in a project of liberation from the British yoke. They call him Mahatma, which in Sanskrit means great soul. Their path is that of non-violent and pacifist civil disobedience. He is a vegetarian and wears self-made peasant clothes to be close to his town. In 1930, Gandhi started the movement when he caused thousands of Indians to violate the British monopoly on salt. The British had prohibited collecting seawater in a bowl and letting it evaporate. Gandhi walks 300 kilometers to the coast and encourages the people to collect the salt. Consequently, he and thousands are detained for months in retaliation. Mohandas Gandhi's peace movement takes on increasing prominence during the conflict. Both Gandhi and his companion Jawaharlal Nehru long for an independent and united India. The other part of the movement, led by Muhammad Jinnah and the Muslim League, demand a separate Muslim nation. Pitted against Gandhi's anti-war movement is Subhas Chandra Bose, a nationalist leader who believes in violence to gain independence. Bose is an intelligent and educated man in England like Gandhi and his companions, even being president of the National Congress until the outbreak of war. The path of anti-British violence leads him to resign from his position and approach the axis of Germany and Japan. Around May 1940, Winston Churchill was named Prime Minister of Great Britain, and at the same time Germany invaded France. The English had sent help to the French, among which were 4 companies from India that fought fiercely. These units, after Germany's resounding success, end up being surrounded in Dunkirk. Some 338,000 soldiers are trapped, so Churchill launches Operation Dynamo, in which he rescues the Allied troops by sea. It is too late, however, for France to resist. After 45 days of combat with Germany, the second largest empire in the world signs its surrender. The French embarrassment and the world's surprise are absolute. England finds itself alone against Hitler. Gandhi in these moments of anxiety calls on the English people not to resist. Peaceful resistance with the English could work, but hardly with the Nazis, which earned Mahatma a lot of criticism. In September of the same year, a German submarine sinks a British ship, where 160 Indian crew members perish. Nicknamed Lascars, Indian sailors work in the English merchant navy, but they are discriminated against in their treatment and salary. During the entire war, some 7,000 Indian sailors would lose their lives in attacks like this. Returning to Indian politics, in October 1940, Gandhi authorized and gave free rein to personal satyagraha. Satyagraha is the affirmation of freedom of expression, so Gandhi's impulse resonates and 500 peaceful resistance assemblies are created. The individual satyagraha movement provides a platform for common people to express their disagreement against British policies on a personal level. Consequently, the British repress the Indians and arrest 20,000 people. Going to the military level, in December 1940, Indian troops participated in Operation Compass in Egypt against the Italian forces sent by Mussolini. The 4th Indian Division together with the 7th of the British Army attacked the Italians and recover the city of Sidi Barrani. They capture 40,000 prisoners and the Italians must retreat into Libya. The 4th Indian Division is recognized and acclaimed by the Allies, and is nicknamed the Red Eagle Division, this being its symbol. Around January 1941, the Indian nationalist leader Chandra Bose is placed under house arrest by the British, but manages to escape to Germany. Bose escapes with the help of the spy Bhagat Talwar, who works for all sides but who is a convinced Indian independence and communist. Bose, already in Germany, makes direct contact with the authorities of the Third Reich. Returning to the war, in February 1941, the Indian troops once again covered themselves in glory with an exceptional performance in Africa. The 4th and 5th Indian Infantry Divisions are thrown against the Italian colony of Eritrea in the town of Karen. This enclave protects the capital and the main port of the country, making it crucial for Italian defense. The Italians have the advantage of the terrain, which is made up of valleys and granite hills that leave attackers exposed. With barely 13,000 men, the Indian Division set out to conquer the hills with courage. An example of this is the action of Richpal Ram, who leads a suicidal charge against a hill, costing him a foot and later receiving the English Victory Medal for that fact. The Italians, led by the Savoy Grenadiers, fiercely defend their positions, and if they lose them they counterattack the next day to recover them. For almost 2 months, both sides bleed together in a back and forth, reminiscent of that on Mamiev Hill in Stalingrad. Finally, the Indians emerge victorious and give Britain full control of the Red Sea and the Italian colonies in East Africa. Prime Minister Churchill profusely congratulates the Viceroy of India for the great performance of the Indian troops who earn the respect of the entire world. After these events, in May, Indian troops from the 8th Infantry Division support the British in Iraq, to overthrow the Iraqi Prime Minister who is a supporter of the Axis. The government of Iraq, having received small support from the German Luftwaffe under Werner Junk as well as support from Vichy France through Syria, holds out for a few weeks before falling into English hands. The Indians are also protagonists of this victory, which secures Iraq's oil in the hands of the Allies. By the end of 1941, the British launched another attack in Libya, driving Rommel back to his original position at El Agheila, where the Indian divisions again fought very well. While this is happening, on the Asian front, Japan attacks the United States in Hawaii on the one hand and England in Hong Kong on the other. With the surprise Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States enters the war forcefully on the Allied side in favor of England. The Indian regiments of Rajput and Punjab participate in the English defense of Hong Kong, resisting for 18 days until the city's surrender due to hunger and thirst at Japanese hands. At the same time, the Japanese landed in Malaysia and Thailand. 2 divisions and a Hindu brigade also participated in the defense in a leading way, but were ultimately defeated. With total air superiority, the Japanese also won the Battle of the Gulf of Siam, in modern-day Vietnam. The 35,000-ton British battleships HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse are sunk. The Japanese seem to not only devastate their land armies, but also on the seas. They invade and take the American Philippines, with General MacArthur retreating and swearing to return to the islands one day. The battle for Borneo also takes place, where the Indian infantry participates in the defense of Brunei, its capital. Once the capital falls, the Indians escape to Dutch Borneo where they organize a guerrilla war until the end of the conflict. Another episode is the devastating Japanese attack against Burma from Thailand. As usual, the 17th Indian Division faces the Japanese but is defeated. Also in Malaysia, the Perak Sulong massacre took place, where Japanese troops murdered 150 Indians and Australians who had already surrendered. By mid-February 1942, the Allies retreat south and entrench themselves in Singapore. This is considered an impregnable position from the sea. The city is built on an island linked by a dam bridge to the Malaysian peninsula. Although the British destroy the dam, the Japanese launch an excellent attack from the sea that has unexpected success. After a few days of fierce fighting, the Allies are forced to retreat, allowing the Japanese to capture their main supply depots. Furthermore, the Allies barely have 10 planes against the hundreds of Japanese planes, which makes things even worse. Finally, Singapore falls into Japanese hands and 85,000 soldiers are taken prisoner, about 130,000 if we add the previous ones from Malaysia. Of these, about 67,000 are Indian soldiers. For Winston Churchill, it is the worst disaster in British military history. In India, many members of the independence movement see it as the collapse of the British Empire. In this way, in a synchronized military operation unprecedented in history, Japan manages to occupy almost all the locations in the Pacific, extending up to 7,000 kilometers from Tokyo in a giant semicircle. The plan drawn up by the Imperial General Staff is impeccable and is the envy of European general staffs. In mid-1942, the Japanese are the owners of the Far East and the Pacific, being a latent threat to Australia and India. The Japanese fleet has 381 ships and 11 aircraft carriers. Not counting the most powerful battleship on the planet, nicknamed Yamato, which has 9 enormous 457mm guns. The impact on India of the Japanese deployment is enormous. War has reached the borders too quickly and is no longer a distant event. The Japanese promise the Hindus that after the war they will be free from the British yoke. Singaporeans of Hindu origin are promised to respect their property, and some 30,000 captured prisoners enlist in the pro-Japanese Indian National Army. The brigades of the Indian National Army organized by the Japanese are called Gandhi, Nehru, and Azad. Its emblem is a Bengal tiger on the flag of India. This army is commanded by Captain Mojan Singh. Singh is a member of the independence movement and is ably contacted by the Japanese. Those who do not join are taken to different destinations in Asia, such as New Guinea, for forced labor. Tokyo promotes the Asian co-prosperity sphere, which would free Asia from Western influence. In reality, it is a kind of Japanese living space, where the rules are imposed on other countries and they are treated in an authoritarian way. In a broader aspect, the Axis dream exalted by German propaganda is to link Rommel's Afrika Korps and Japanese troops in India, uniting both empires. But this will never go beyond being a dream. The Hindus, for their part, know the cruelty and brutality of the Japanese occupation of China and Korea, and now take note of the same in Burma, Indochina, and the Philippines. From the Allied side, in India, they are preparing for a massive Japanese landing in Bengal or Orissa. In Bengal, uncertainty is complete and the Japanese are expected to occupy the region within months. Towards the end of February 1942, the largest naval battle since 1916 is fought in the Java Sea. The Japanese managed to sink 3 Allied cruisers and 3 destroyers, then occupying all of the Dutch Indies, which are rich in resources. After this, the British prepare to evacuate Burma, destroying the port and oil facilities before evacuating the capital. The Japanese take over Burma, which is almost part of India. Until 1937 it was part of the British Raj, and the relationship between both states is total. The social, commercial and cultural links could not be deeper. There are even 1 million Indians living in Burma. Also known as Burma, the region is a source of wood, minerals, but especially rice. Through a route that crosses this country, India sent supplies to China, which was fighting the Empire of Japan in a fight to the death. The Japanese rushed to cut off this route and thus managed to weaken the Chinese. The battlefront in the Burma area is the wild jungle, which is worse than the Russian winter. It drives the combatants crazy, who are ravaged by diseases of all kinds. Snake and insect bites, as well as malaria, dysentery, yellow fever, typhus or dengue are everyday things. The heat, the swamps, the inaccessible mountain ranges and the suffocating vegetation make up a desolate panorama. Faced with the Japanese attack, civilians panic and flee towards India, with 600,000 people crossing the border with the province of Bengal. Most arrive malnourished or sick and the refugee camps are in chaos. In general terms, refugees from all over the world also come to India, from Malta to Kazakhstan, as well as Poles and Thais. The coastal cities seem deserted, as merchants, faced with the threat of invasion and constant Japanese bombing, flee to the interior of the territory. But the sea is a source of fishing and trade from which many Indians live, complicating any evacuation from Bengal. Both the Indian state and the British colonial state appear to have collapsed, which will result in a terrible famine the following year. In April 1942, Japanese forces sink the English aircraft carrier Hermes in the Indian Ocean. They also bomb Sri Lanka and the major city of Visakhapatnam. The Bay of Bengal is surrounded by the Japanese fleet and India is at its most vulnerable. Given this, troops from Africa are urgently repatriated and located in Bengal and Orissa to defend the border. For the good of India, China and the rest of Asia, in June the Japanese suffer their greatest defeat against the United States. At Midway Atoll, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, both fleets collide, ending everything in disaster for Japan. They lose 4 aircraft carriers in just 3 days, which generates concern in the Japanese High Command. But for England this joy was short-lived. In India there is an open rebellion against British colonialism. The party led by Gandhi adopts a resolution calling not to support the war if England does not promise independence. The English must leave after the war if they want the support of the Indian people. Faced with this frontal challenge, the English reacted by imprisoning Gandhi and all the leaders of the movement. Protests break out and direct clashes occur between the Indians and the police and the British Army. 70 police stations, 250 train stations and 85 government buildings are burned. England mobilized up to 57 infantry battalions to restore order, leaving 4,000 dead and 90,000 imprisoned. This is a point of no return for the British Crown, which is beginning to realize that keeping India under its power is unviable. On the other side, in the heart of the Axis, the Waffen-SS Indian Legion is formed. Made up of volunteers, it has up to 4,500 soldiers who fight for Hitler and the independence of their country. They will participate in various battles, from Normandy to Berlin. By the end of 1942, the British achieved a definitive victory against Rommel's troops in Alamein. Indian troops take up combat in an exemplary manner once again, and will continue to participate in Italy's campaign against Mussolini. While this is happening, General Charles Wingate takes control in India to defend the Japanese invasion. Wingate creates a group of commandos to operate behind enemy lines. Nicknamed Chindits after the mythical Burmese lion, this force trains to carry 33 kilos of weight and march through the jungle until they reach the Japanese lines. Once infiltrated, the Chindits destroy fuel and food depots, weakening the Japanese forces. In addition to creating this unit, Wingate counterattacks in Burma, occupying Arakan and leaving 100,000 soldiers on the border as a defensive force. While this is happening, the pro-Japanese Indian Army of 43,000 soldiers suffers a change in its leadership. Chief Mohan Singh is deposed and imprisoned by the Japanese, and is replaced by Chandra Bose, who travels from Germany to take control of the Indian force. Towards March 1943, famine hit hard in the Bengal region, causing around 2 or 3 million deaths. Malaria and smallpox also hit the Indian population like a hurricane, overflowing the hospitals of Calcutta. Families disintegrate with child abandonment, sale of children, prostitution, and all kinds of situations. People from the countryside migrate to the cities only to die lying in the streets. Dogs and scavenger birds take the opportunity to eat the human remains that are everywhere. Clothing is also in short supply, since India sells much of its production to the British, causing the little remaining fabric to be sold by speculators, who buy and sell at a very high price. Consequently, peasants cannot buy clothes, going so far as to steal fabrics from tombs in cemeteries. While this is happening, the Viceroy of India, Victor Linlithgow, warns of a growing famine and requests the shipment of food throughout 1943, but these are denied by the British Military Committee. The British in the metropolis, including Winston Churchill, preferred to avoid aid to Bengal so as not to delay the preparations for D-Day, nor the operations in Africa, Italy, and Greece. In his own words at a meeting, India had to pay the price of the war as everyone else had done, and furthermore, any aid would be scarce because Indians reproduce like rabbits. Probably at the beginning of the famine, Churchill did not see the dimension of the disaster that was being generated. Furthermore, it must be clarified that the availability of ships to send grain to India, avoiding the danger of the Japanese fleet, was complex to say the least, with the English fleet carrying out operations around the world simultaneously. This shortage of ships is evident in the refusal of President Roosevelt of the United States to help India, alleging that they needed their ships for their own purposes. Another person who requests help is the British Secretary for India, Leo Amery, who also makes clear the worrying situation in Bengal that was becoming sinister in mid-1943. But once again he is also ignored by the British Committee, which postpones the aid. Despite the poor British response throughout most of 1943, the situation had been generated by a variety of different factors. First, a cyclone that had devastated the rice harvest a few months earlier, as well as inflation and speculation by local merchants. Secondly, the difficulty of importing food from Burma due to the Japanese presence. In addition to this, local governments in India that had surplus grain did not send anything during the first months. Once nearby provinces began sending aid, a flood destroyed several railroad tracks, making it more difficult for supplies to arrive. Once these roads are repaired, aid arrives in large quantities, but the local government does not have enough men to distribute the food throughout the territory. Churchill, finally seeing the dimension of the tragedy, asks the new Viceroy, Percival Wavell, to spare no effort to stop the shortage, even if he must divert ships from the Allied military effort. Viceroy Wavell orders total military mobilization, bringing 15,000 soldiers to distribute the food. With distribution resolved, the famine begins to subside, ending in December 1943 when the new rice crop can be harvested. Survivors of famine and epidemics desperately gather the harvest themselves. Although the very poor context and conditions of Bengal generated the famine, it is clear that the British policy of prioritizing the war effort before the Bengali population also prevented a rapid response that would stop the tragedy in time. The local government of Bengal, along with the Indian upper class and speculative merchants, also did not help solve the problem. The Bengal famine is a huge tragedy within an even bigger tragedy, which continues to be debated around the world today. While the Bengal famine was taking place, the Japanese placed Chandra Bose at the head of the Provisional Government of Free India, based on the islands of Andaman and Nicobar. This Indian government had its own currency, judicial courts, and even its own civil code. By September 1943, the Allies landed in Italy as well, with 3 Indian divisions and a Gurkha brigade participating. A few months later, they assault the German Gustav Line defending Rome. On this line the battle for Monte Cassino takes place, defended by the 1st German Parachute Division. The 4th Indian Division charges furiously towards the hills, but is brutally decimated. Then the Australians, Poles, South Africans, French, English and Americans are also decimated. Only after 4 months of fighting, the Germans retreat. Allied casualties are 60,000 against just 20,000 Germans. A few months later, in March 1944, the Japanese launched their invasion of India. After settling in Burma, General Mutaguchi, in charge of the 15th Army, presents a plan to invade India. The idea generates great discussions among the Japanese generals, since Japan has been at war with China for 6 years and with the United States for 2. facing India in its difficult geography could only worsen the Japanese situation. According to Mutaguchi, an advance in India could cut off Indian supplies to China permanently and prevent the construction of the Ledo Highway that was being built for that purpose. With this idea, Mutaguchi forces his invasion and gains the support of Hideki Toyo, the Japanese prime minister. In this way, Japan invades India with a total of 80,000 infantry soldiers, and with the support of Chandra Bose's Indian National Army. On the other side, the Indians total a sum of 100,000 men. The Japanese attack relies on a distractive movement in Arakan and a main one in Impul, to obtain a quick victory because the troops in the middle of the jungle and mountains are very difficult to supply with food and ammunition. If they do not surround and capture Impul within a few weeks, they will not be able to sustain the offensive. This is how the Japanese launch themselves, determined to win quickly. But they clash against a renewed and efficiently trained Indian army, which has British and American support. The fighting takes place fiercely and wildly in the middle of the jungle. Shortly after the action began, the Japanese diversionary attack launched in Arakan failed completely. This allows the Americans to transport the 5th Indian Division from Arakan to Impul by plane. In just 11 days, the veteran Indian Division is defending Impul in a determined manner. In the south, Chandra Bose's Nationalist Army makes some gains, reaching the Hind Hills. Starting in April, the Japanese attacked Impul from all directions, but the lack of anti-tank weapons as well as short food rations prevented them from advancing. Each Japanese advance is paid for with many dead, and the offensive stagnates around Impul for weeks. While this is happening, the Japanese also attack Kohima, in northeastern India. A small group of 1,500 British, Indian, and Nepalese soldiers face a Japanese division of 15,000 men. The city is isolated and can only be supplied by air. The besieged men resist stoically until the arrival of reinforcements, especially those of the Punjab regiment. The Japanese must withdraw after 2 months of fighting with 5,000 dead, not counting those killed by hunger and jungle diseases. After this, in the Impul area, the Indians counterattack and the Japanese withdraw, abandoning all their artillery in a disorderly manner. They were absolutely exhausted, having suffered more than 50,000 casualties and the loss of all their horses and pack oxen. The Japanese defeat is decisive and the Indians rush towards the Burmese capital of Rangoon, which is captured without resistance. While this is happening, Mahatma Gandhi is released from prison, after having been imprisoned in August 1942. Gandhi will push even harder for India's independence. In January 1945, Indian troops of the 26th Infantry Division joined the British in the Allied victory at the Battle of Ramri Island in Burma. During the battle and fleeing through the jungle, between 500 and 1,000 Japanese soldiers are eaten by saltwater crocodiles during the night. Around May 9, 1945, with the surrender of Germany, the war in Europe ends and the Allies concentrate on defeating Japan completely. After the Battle of Berlin, the remnants of the SS Indian Volunteer Legion attempt to escape to neutral Switzerland, but are captured by the Americans and British. They are deported to India to stand trial for treason, but are eventually released. In India they are not seen as traitors, but as nationalist dissidents. In mid-June, both Nehru and the Indian leaders of the Congress are released after being imprisoned for 3 years. After this, a conference takes place between the Viceroy of India Lord Wavell and these leaders, including Gandhi. In this series of meetings, the future Indian independence begins to be discussed. By August 1945, after warnings to the Japanese, the atomic bomb Little Boy was dropped on the city of Hiroshima, causing 140,000 deaths. On the 9th, upon receiving no response from Japan, the second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The Soviets also invade Manchuria, devastating the Japanese in said territory. All this, added to the immense hardship of the Japanese people, is enough. Japan finally surrenders on September 2, 1945. A very different world emerges from the end of World War II. The horror of Nazism has disappeared and Japan's imperial desires are no longer a threat. But for the United Kingdom, victory and sacrifice are not free. England has been involved in a fight for its subsistence against Hitler and Japan that has left it exhausted. The Victorian era is over, and with it, traditional colonialism. England must let go of the so-called jewel of the empire, India, after 87 years of total control. A nation that had made a gigantic sacrifice during the war demanded independence from it. At the end of the conflict, India contributed 2,500,000 men to the Allied army, with around 4,000 being decorated. 31 of them were awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest British military decoration for courage in the face of the enemy. But 87,000 soldiers and more than 3 million innocent civilians have also died. This enormous contribution was recognized by Marshal Claude Auchinleck when he once said that the British would not have been able to win the First and Second World Wars without the Indian Army. Such a statement should forever capture India's bravery and sacrifice during this conflict in the history books. Beyond this, with the end of the war, the country is in a deliberative state. Demonstrations and strikes are permanent, with civil resistance promoted by Gandhi. Furthermore, the British Conservative Party that had governed until then is replaced by the Labour Party, which is much more inclined to the independence of India. Added to this are the pressures from the United States and the USSR. By February 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee announced the independence of India in the near future. For this, he sends Lord Mountbatten as Viceroy. Finally, on August 15, 1947, India declared its independence. After independence, tensions between Muslims led by Jinnah, who want a separate Muslim nation, and the Hindu majority led by Gandhi and Nehru, who prefer a single country, become unsustainable. Gandhi offers Jinnah to be the leader of United India even though he is a Muslim. The Hindus reluctantly accept Gandhi's proposal, but not the Muslims who want their own nation. This is how the division between India and Pakistan occurs. England commissions lawyer Cyril Radcliffe to draw the borders. The partition of the Indian subcontinent that would be present-day India and present-day Pakistan is decided. Also a part of Bengal, in the Muslim-majority east of India, remains under the control of Pakistan. This would become Bangladesh in 1971, as an independent country. The migration of Muslims from India to Pakistan is the largest in history, with some 15 million displaced. Muslims migrate to Pakistan, but Hindus and Sikhs living in the territory that is now Pakistan must go to India. There are thousands of kilometers and the poorest travel them on foot. The columns that cross each other confront each other in violent clashes, as if in a religious war. This uncontrolled migration causes nearly 1 million deaths, more than 100,000 raped women and 12 million homeless people. A real disaster. On January 30, 1948, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, prepared to go to his prayer place in Delhi. He has fasted and plans to make a pilgrimage to Pakistan to contribute to peace. From the crowd that follows his movements with devotion, one Nathuram Godse emerges. He is a Hindu nationalist who admires Gandhi but rejects his support of Muslims. After making his way among the people, Godse shoots Gandhi's chest with a Beretta pistol, hitting it decisively. At the age of 78, one of the great protagonists of contemporary history dies. Gandhi's funeral is attended by 2 million people, including leaders from around the world. His ashes are thrown into the Ganges River, where they merge with the new free India that has just been born. Almost 80 years later, India has prospered greatly, life expectancy increased from 35 to 67 years, its economy grows rapidly year after year accompanied by very great educational development. Production is no longer only agricultural but also industrial and services of all kinds. The Dalit class, who were immensely discriminated against, are little by little achieving better rights and living conditions. The fight had been worth it.